In February of 1998, Tupac murder suspect Orlando Baby Lane Anderson was deposed by attorneys for Tupac's mother, who had filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Anderson for Tupac's murder.
From 1995 to date, have you ever ridden in a white Cadillac?
No.
Do you know anyone who owns a white Cadillac?
No.
And during this deposition, it was revealed that just 9 months earlier, Orlando Anderson had been arrested and detained for the attempted bank robbery of this Bank of America in Inglewood. Had this alleged Southside Crip drug dealer and shooter moved on to robbing banks? And what happened to these charges? In this episode, I'll reveal the files for this little-known case involving the notorious Baby Lane, and at least one other person whose name will be familiar to anyone following this story closely. It's May 12th, 1997. Just 8 months after the murder of Tupac in Las Vegas, and barely 2 months since Biggie's shooting in LA. A young woman enters a Bank of America on Crenshaw Boulevard in Inglewood, California, and attempts to cash a check for $195. But the bank teller is suspicious because the check was filled out in red ink, and I think that possibly indicated to them that someone may have written over the original writing on the check. So she has her manager conduct a check approval and call the owner of the account to confirm the check is legitimate. And that person says the check is not payable to this person, so the bank calls the police. But by this point, the girl who'd walked in with the check was pacing back and forth, and then she bailed. The cops must have gotten there fast because as they arrived, they saw this suspect walking to a white van in the bank's parking lot that had 5 men and a juvenile girl inside. And after ignoring the police and climbing into the van, the female suspect then exited the van and started walking away from the bank over to Crenshaw, and then started running down Crenshaw when one of the officers went after her and told her to stop. He caught up to her, put her in handcuffs, and then she asked him to return her to the bank so she could speak to, quote, her homies, which the cop did. And I'm sure her homies had preferred that she leave them out of this. Back in the parking lot, the other officer had already detained the van's other occupants, and then more officers arrived and the van was searched, which revealed 2 black knit beanies and 5 brown gloves, and a Llama 9mm semi-automatic blue steel handgun, which was loaded. They also found $190 in cash in the dashboard ashtray, which no one in the van would claim. And Orlando Anderson, who by this point was considered the leading suspect for Tupac's murder, was one of the guys in the van, although he initially gave police the name Tremont Anderson, which I believe was actually the name of his brother. And the other occupants included other alleged Southside Crip associates, including Kenneth Carson and Orlando Anderson's close friend, Michael Lil Owl Duro, who would be with Orlando Anderson almost exactly a year later when he was killed during a shootout at a Compton car wash in May of 1998. The officers considered the facts that the bank was about to close for the day, that a gun, beanies, and gloves were found in the van, and that numerous Bank of Americas had been the targets of robberies in the past, including, I should add, the B of A that disgraced LAPD officer David Mack had successfully robbed about 9 miles away just 5 months earlier. So the cops at the scene concluded that the subjects in the van were there to commit a bank robbery, and they were all arrested. The following day, a woman showed up at the Inglewood police station and told them she'd rented the white van from Enterprise and had lent it to Tremont, who was actually Orlando Anderson. But when he was interviewed by a detective, Orlando Anderson denied getting the van from this woman, or of even knowing her, and denied knowing anything about the items recovered from the van, and then he asked for a lawyer. Owl Duro also denied knowing anything about the items in the van, like the gun and the beanies, or of any criminal activity. And Kenneth Carson, another alleged Southside Crip associate, claimed that he was the van's driver and that someone, possibly his aunt, had rented it for him. And he claimed the 9mm found in the van belonged to one of the girls. And the girl who tried to cash the check seemed to confirm this when she told a jailer to tell the officer that I stuck the gun in the car. Police had also found 15 checks in the purse of the other girl in the van, the one who hadn't gone inside the bank, and she admitted that they weren't hers. And in an interview months later, she admitted to attempting to cash a check at the same bank 2 weeks earlier, and it turned out police were already looking for her because she'd left her ID behind at the bank. Orlando Anderson and the others were detained in the Inglewood Police's jail overnight, and their bail was set at $60,000 for the girl who tried to cash the check and $50,000 for Orlando and the others. But ultimately, the bank robbery charge wasn't pursued, and all of the suspects were released after apparently spending a couple of nights in jail. The detective on the case said that while he didn't believe what the subjects in the van told them, there was no victim. And I think it would have been hard to prove attempted bank robbery when the suspected robbers never even got out of the van. It's a little ironic, but I think the fact that the beanies and the gun could have been meant for any number of other crimes, or no crime at all, made it impossible to charge them with a specific crime like attempted bank robbery. And since Orlando Anderson was the highest profile person in the van, considering all of the attention he'd been receiving over Tupac's murder, his attorneys claimed that he was being harassed by police and had done nothing wrong. The girl who tried to cash the check was charged with forgery, but it appears charges against the others were either dropped or never filed. But for some of them, their freedom was short-lived. A year later, Orlando Anderson would be killed in a shootout, and his friend Owl Duro would catch 3 life sentences for his involvement in that same shooting.